So we're very excited to start the second half of today's program with Stephanie Dumont from FINRA. Steffi's in a brand new job, and we're excited to hear about her new position and how she's finding it so far. Listen, FINRA's always had a very open door with the STA, and we've always appreciated that. It's been a long ongoing relationship, and through past presidents and chairmen and stuff, so we've always appreciated the relationship that we've had, and we're looking forward to obviously continuing that through Stephanie. So Stephanie Dumont began her career at FINRA 22 years ago, and most recently was promoted to Executive Vice President and Head of Market Regulation and Transparency Services. And moderating today's panel is going to be Cass Sanford, Associate General Counsel at OTC Markets Group. So if you want to come on up, we can get going. All right.
Some bright lights.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I just want to thank Jim and the STA, the board, the affiliate groups, Carrie and Don, all of the work that goes into this. It's truly very impressive to have everyone out here. Most impressive that he was able to get everyone out of their sweatpants, dust off their suits, and get into a room. But it's really, really great to see you all. And so I'm very excited to be here and able to speak to Stephanie Dumont, who, as Jim mentioned, has just moved into her new role as Head of Market Regulation and Transparency Services at FINRA. Prior to that, Stephanie was with FINRA's Office of the General Counsel, serving as Director of Capital Markets Policy. So before we get into kind of everything that's happening today and your new role and FINRA's response, I'd like to just start off with a little kind of get to know you. You started really early in your career in market regulation and enforcement, and so I'd like to know, your background, how you got here, and what's kind of like drawn you to the space.
Absolutely, and let me first echo what you said also. Thanks to Jim and the STA for getting us all here. This is like so exciting. This is my first real outing in a work setting. So this is great, and I'm really happy to be here. And thanks for inviting me and including FINRA in this program. So yes, my background, you're absolutely right. I actually started my career in the department that I'm in now many years ago. And if you back up even before that, I was pretty focused on securities law, securities enforcement, because back growing up, a family friend actually worked at the SEC in the enforcement department. And so early on, I thought that just seems like such a great career, such a great thing to do, and my progression from there was finance major, went to law school, I interned at the SEC, I tried the law firm thing out as a summer, and I totally knew this was my more happy place, is working in the regulatory side. So from there, I started at NASD in market regulation right out of law school, doing investigations, and I got to do a whole host of different areas. That's one of the great things about NASD, now FINRA, is we cover so many different areas, and there's so many opportunities to learn about all different products, all different, business approaches, and all the different regulatory areas. So I did that for a number of years. I then left and went to a compliance consulting firm, again trying to focus on the regulatory compliance side. And then I got drawn back to FINRA, NASD in the OGC policy side, because when I did work in market reg, we would complain about the way the rules were written. So I thought, hey, I'll go in OGC and I'll help write the rules. So I did that for a number of years, and my main area, my team supported market reg and transparency services, among other areas in FINRA. So here I am.
Well, suffice it to say, you're bringing a whole lot of experience to your new role. A lot of folks might know you more in your with your policy hat on, but now as head of Market Reg and Transparency Services, you're really going to be responsible for overseeing a lot of different components of what FINRA does and broker-dealer activities. So I'm curious, how do you view that the department's role within FINRA, and what are some of your high-level regulatory priorities for this year and the years ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're exactly right. I think many of the people that I saw in the lobby here and talking, I know from my general counsel days, and we worked really closely with the Market Reg and Transparency Services folks. So we were really a partnership, and it continues to be a partnership across the organization. That's how we approach all the different challenges that we have at FINRA. And I would say on the regulatory priorities for the department, so I think about them, there are the enterprise priorities, and then there are the regulatory substantive ones. And the enterprise ones, it's definitely a different focus when you're in the operating area, the Market Reg Transparency Services area, versus more on the policy side. So the priorities, I think, enterprise-wide in Market Reg and TS, the ones that I think day-to-day we're really focused on in our department, one is our regulatory surveillance program, of course. Like, that's number one. We are constantly thinking about ways to be better, improve, innovate. Our relationships with our regulatory partners, our SRO exchanges, and being able to partner and work together on surveillance and cross-market regulatory initiatives, and of course working with the SEC and Physio and Trading and Markets. So that's always a big focus. Our transparency side is also a big focus and priority. We're always, again, thinking about how can we bring more transparency, bring in more data, and get that out to the marketplace and investors. And the third one that I think that isn't as transparent probably to everyone, but hopefully people see the benefits of it, is our integrated regulatory operations. And so Market Reg is one of three of the main departments in what we call kind of regulatory operations. So it's Market Reg, and then it's member supervision, who are the front line and do all the examinations, and then enforcement. And we have been really focused as an organization on making sure we're integrated, we're efficient, we're working together, that the pipeline of something starting from an alert, going to an investigation, and then going to enforcement, that we're all collaborating, working together. And so the firms, when they hear from FINRA, we are a unified, an integrated FINRA. You're not hearing from one area and then you're hearing from another area the same thing. So that's been a big focus of ours. Really, we are focused on that constantly. So those are all the sort of enterprise-wide priorities.
No, that's fantastic. I think, coming from the industry side, it's certainly useful to get just like that overview of FINRA as an entire organization. Often you're dealing with different departments and you deal with the same people every day, but just to understand how it works holistically is very helpful. So we'll get to the more of the transparency and data stuff in a bit, but first, you took over as head of Market Reg really in the midst of the meme stock frenzy earlier this year. So I'm curious how FINRA has responded to those market-wide events, kind of as more of the industry regulator, SRO, how FINRA's response is maybe different from the SEC, and how you're responding to the conversations that have come out of congressional hearings recently.
Yep, absolutely. And it's definitely been really just a sort of crazy time to be in the industry and be, especially in Market Reg. But even before, sort of earlier this year, the meme stock, there was really a lot of volatility when we moved into the pandemic. And so we have been focused on just all the the trading that's been going on in response to the meme stocks and also all the volatility. And I think we've done a number of things. We were always focused on best X and short selling and other areas, but it really, the events that have transpired have really, I think, brought them even more to the forefront. So volatility, for example, in response to the volatility, I know some firms restricted trading. There may have been reactions to it that we are taking a really close look at, because if you're going to restrict trading, and that may be an appropriate response, it has to be done consistently, it has to be done fairly. So we're looking at that. We put out a notice on that point to basically say, if you're going to restrict trading, make sure you do it fairly and consistently, and you should have a plan in place. So firms should be prepared for volatility, and they should have a plan in place, and that plan should actually be communicated to customers, so customers aren't surprised either, and they know and they're aligned as to what to expect when the firm when the firm has to basically implement those procedures. Another area that really came into focus with the meme stock and other volatility is options. So we've done a number of things on the options front as well. We put out a notice, again, really reminding firms about their obligations when they're opening options accounts. So there are diligence requirements, and you need to make a finding about the customer that it's appropriate for them to be trading options. And that's not just where you're doing a recommendation. Our options account rule, it applies even when it's self-directed. So we put out a reminder about that. And then to complement sort of the guidance side, we also have started a sweep is what they're called, but you can see a copy of the letter on our website. We post whenever we're doing targeted exams. And so we've also coupled that with a targeted review to look at the practices that firms have employed in the options area, so that we can take a closer look at that. And short sales is another area that definitely came into the forefront. There was a lot of short sale issues and activities. We saw a lot of concerns with meeting the locate requirements, particularly with threshold securities and hard to borrow securities. So that's another area that we've definitely have been focused on. And of course, one thing that we had to do and jump in to do as quickly as possible is recreate what happened in the market. And CAT data was just amazingly helpful, and it just really supplemented what we could have done in the past. So not only did we have equities data, we had even more equities data, more granular, and we had all the options data before it hits the exchange floor, which we never had in sort of a systematic form before CAT. So those are just a number of things. But yeah, a lot of going on very quickly when I started this role.
Oh yeah,
great,
you certainly set the stage there. There's a lot of threads to pull there. So I'm going to
We'd probably need an hour or two for that.
Yeah, we're going to try and get through as many in whatever time we have left. But FINRA proposed a short sale reform earlier this year in response to some of the activity that you talked about. So I'm curious about the proposal more specifically, but also just as a process and proposals like the short sale reform and others, how do you view your role in terms of balancing the interests of, on the one hand, you obviously have the benefits of increased transparency for the market and regulators of that type of information around short sale activity, but on the other hand, how are you balancing the burden on firms that are also, in the midst of working through other reporting regimes like CAT, and then, other considerations and competing interests like customer personal data rights. How are you looking at those types of rule proposals?
Yes, great question. And the short interest notice is a great example, I think, of the balancing there on these kinds of things. So So it was prompted by the meme stock activity. Clearly, there were a lot of questions about the short interest positions and the fails, and how the sort of transparency into that. And we had always been looking at short interest too to see if there are ways that we can improve that. So we put out the notice, and I mean, that's one of the key mechanisms that we use to get information, to get understanding from the firms and other market participants on kind of determining that balance between transparency and getting more information out there and the burdens. And I can say that this particular notice was quite successful at doing that. We got over 1,800 comment letters, which is a record for FINRA. And I think it is great. We had extended the time because people reached out and said, we really want to comment. We're really interested in, but we need a little bit more time. So we're glad. We were very happy to get all these comments in. So as you can imagine, we are working our way through the 1,800 comment letters at a high level. I think you've hit on the sort of flavors that we've been getting. There are some that are like, this is great, do more. There are some that this is a nice initiative, but the burdens associated with it are pretty significant, or there are some, some are concerned about the customer information, or the proprietary information you might be revealing if you do this. And some of the comments too, which is always appreciated, are alternatives. So maybe instead of doing this in short interest, you do it as regulatory data. And so it's been great. So that's one of our primary vehicles that we use, is our reg notice, to kind of get that exact balance as close as possible to right.
Oh, that's fantastic. That was a heavily commented.
Yes.
So good luck with your nighttime reading on that.
Short interest, short anything, short sale always brings in a lot of very strong feelings and views on both sides. So yeah, that was, but 1,800 was pretty impressive.
Trying to bring up the divisive issues here. So our industry is constantly evolving and changing. And it puts a lot of pressure on regulators to kind of keep up with the trends. Yeah. One of the things that we've seen in the past couple of years is the move to zero commission app-based trading, as well as fractional trading. Yeah. And obviously a lot of pros to this, and in terms of lowering the barriers to entry for new investors to join the market. Yeah. But is this an area that FINRA is considering, enhancing its rule set, or, publishing new guidance?
Well, I guess I would start with, we're definitely focused on that area. We have been focused on it from a year or two ago. We did a zero commission sweep, so that was our sort of one of the ways that we will go out and really focus on a particular area. And with the zero commission sweep, we were looking at a couple different areas on the zero commission model. We were looking at payment for order flow. Of course, we can't have a panel without us saying payment for order flow.
We'll get into that.
So we were focused on payment for order flow, and how is it influencing your best X? So I think, as we all know, payment for order flow is permissible, but it does raise conflicts. And are you, as a firm, are you ensuring that it doesn't unduly influence your best execution? We were also looking at zero commission, not only payment for order flow, but there are other monetary, if you're not getting commissions, how else are you getting your revenue? Is it margin interest? Is it sweep account fees? And are those being properly disclosed and communicated to the customer? And the third area that we were focused on was advertising around zero commission. So, for example, some firms might say, hey, we're zero commission, but if if there was fine print, it would tell you they weren't all zero commission. It was only on the S&P 500 or some subset of securities. So we were also looking at that aspect of zero commissions. So that's ongoing. Can say in the payment for order flow and best X area, a couple of actions have come out of it. And they really have focused on the regular and rigorous side of best execution. So the firms that were, the concerns with the firms that we had brought actions against was when they went out to do their regular and rigorous and look at where they wanted to consider routing and look at execution quality, they limited it to only those venues where they got payment for order flow. And that's not consistent with best execution. You need to evaluate all the different potential venues for getting, in order to get best execution. So, you know, and the other areas are still ongoing. We're still looking at that. So I can then say also we put out a notice on best execution and payment for order flow, again, relating to all the focus that's been on zero commission models and payment for order flow. And that notice really was just a reminder. We took a lot of guidance that we've put out over the years on best execution and payment for order flow related, and we combined it into a notice given the focus on there. And that notice talked about sort of that it's not appropriate to take to let payment for order flow influence what the price improvement is that you're going to be able to get to your customer, get for your customer. So you can't sort of have a dial where you're getting more payment for order flow and worse execution quality for your customer. And then we, in that notice, we also reminded firms about basically using all the price information that's available to you. So, for example, if you are getting odd lot information in proprietary feeds for your own trading, you should be using that information for your customer best execution too. And then the third message or reminder in that notice was you can't disclose away best execution. I think everyone knows that, but it's nice to have it said again, especially in this context where there's there's definitely a lot of disclosure out there on payment for order flow, but that doesn't, you know, change your requirements on the best execution. So that was kind of a long answer to your question, but there's a lot to unpack in that.
You just got ahead of me. I was going to ask you eventually, but no, it seems like the principles are there from the existing, you know, rules that govern this stuff, and your response has been to just kind of refresh it with notice to members and reminders to the industry.
Right. Make sure you're focused on that and the potential conflicts, and that you're not letting it unduly influence your best execution.
So I'm going to switch gears now and move to the over-the-counter space, which is where more my domain. But we saw changes to Rule 15C211, the SEC rule governing quotes in OTC securities. We saw those go into effect last week. And essentially, the new rule now requires that there be some form of disclosure from the issuer in order for the issuer to maintain a public market. And on the broker's end, either the broker or the market operator, like OTC markets, needs to confirm that that disclosure is available before a quote can go out. So at some point in the month or so leading up until this compliance date, there was a bit of a frenzy in the fixed income community around the fact that the commission came out and said that this rule, which had historically been applied mostly in just the OTC equity space, applied generally to OTC securities and thus included fixed income. So I know that the commission has released a little bit of relief for the industry to the end of this year. To allow them some time to wrap their head around what is a very complicated rule and maybe develop systems in place. Are you speaking with the fixed income community about this, or what has your engagement or communication been around this kind of issue?
Yes, we absolutely are, and we're looking forward to continued discussions between the industry and FINRA and the SEC and all interested parties. In fact, the relief letter was addressed to FINRA. So from our perspective, we have a corollary rule to 15C211 that requires you to file the Form 211 with us, and that rule is only applied to equities by its terms. It hadn't applied to fixed income securities. I think there's been an evolution in the fixed income market that when that rule when 15C211 went into effect, it certainly wouldn't have been top of mind that fixed income, that it applied to fixed income. So we are absolutely working closely with the interested parties on this and the SEC to see, what the landing place will be for 211 and fixed income, because we have well, even though our rule where you file the Form 211 doesn't apply to fixed income, we do exams for 15C211. So we would, we'd want to make sure we're all understanding what the framework is going forward.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure there will be many conversations in the months following about what exactly is the path forward for the fixed income markets. But if anyone needs Rule 15C211 help, you can always come over to OTC. And
well, I was going to say, you and OTC markets were obviously very busy leading up to the September deadline.
It's been a big lift over the past year and a half. We saw big changes across the market last Tuesday, actually, with all of the securities of companies that are not providing that information going to our expert markets. So yeah, big change. We're speaking to a lot of our broker-dealer subscribers and market data users and getting them familiar with it, because it's just a big shift in how participants interact with our market. So even just instituting that for the fixed income space is no small lift.
No, that definitely. But overall, it was successful, positive.
I think so far so good.
That's great.
We're always room for improvement, but we're happy with the outcome. Now, to keep going to an even more recent regulatory update, FINRA published a rule proposal just yesterday, I believe, around order routing disclosure.
Yes.
So the rule proposal really operates with similar principles to 606 under Reg NMS, but applies to OTC equity securities. And will require firms transacting in OTC equities to publish quarterly reports, including venues that you've routed to, and payment for order flow, compensation, and information around that. And it applies generally to all OTC traded equities, domestics, Canadian listed, F shares, and ADRs. Yep. So. If you could speak a little bit about that proposal in general, and then in developing that, did you look to the Rule 606 conversation and debate implementation, adoption when the NMS, when it came out for NMS in creating this proposal?
So this has actually been in the works before the sort of more recent focus on. In fact, it came out of a lot of work of our Market Reg Committee, which is one of our standing committees at FINRA, where it's made up of industry and non-industry. The buy side is on that committee too, and academics, and then industry folks. And we had actually been working on it before all of the focus. The unlisted market sometimes ends up being the tail to the dog on the NMS, and you'll see we had, over the past 10 years, we've adopted a lot of NMS principled rules like limit order display and manning and lock cross and other sub-penny rules. So they tend to happen in the NMS, and then we look at them and adjust them in the unlisted. So this is kind of an example of that. And the timing, of course, is, I think, good in that getting more information out there is a good thing. That's one of our key objectives all the time, is to do as much as we can to help get more information in the hands of market participants and investors. So that is definitely in line with that. Our committee and also internally discussions around this, we had really started with 605 and 606, but I think the decision was we're going to start with 606, again, be a little bit iterative about this and not jump into the entire framework. I would call attention to the other part of the notice too. It's mostly in the last question, where we have about 15, I think, questions that we asked specifically about it. So it is focused on the unlisted market, but we are looking to see if there's more we can do in the broader NMS space too. I think in some of the prior SEC proposals and the MSAC and other groups have recommended that it would be great to have more of a unified place to get 606 reports, 605 reports, maybe even integrated more. Is there more that we can be doing at FINRA? Does it make sense for us to be playing more of a direct role in getting that information collected and out there? So that question's out there. It's really broad. I encourage any and all people interested in this topic who might have a view on that. Maybe we can get to 1,800 comment letters. I'm not sure that we'll ever meet that one. But this one, I really hope people weigh in on it if you have perspectives and views on that.
Great. No, it's always easier to get to 1,800 if you're angry about something. But
hopefully this one is more
I know I've heard
positive.
here yesterday and today some talk about modernizing 605 and getting better data out there around execution quality. Is this a place where folks should write in and talk about that, or strictly to 606?
I wouldn't discourage any comments, but you know, I think those kinds of enhancements are most definitely in the purview of the SEC, but we support any improvements that can get, again, more information out there. It can help with best X. It really is foundational having that information available, and the more precise it is, the more specific it is about price improvement and what, you know, what's actually happening with execution quality, the better.
Great. Well, now everyone has their homework.
Yeah, comment letters.
Yes. Well, I think we're out of time here, but I just want to thank you so much for being here, and it's incredibly important that we have this type of dialogue and open conversation between FINRA and the industry, so it's really wonderful to have you.
Thank you, and I guess, yeah, we're out of town, but I wanted to give Jim a shout out. Sorry, you can stand. So of the many things, Jim works really well with FINRA. He does really a lot to advocate for a lot of different issues and perspectives. And one thing we just got approved was our qualification waiver. You know, he was a big advocate, especially for those people who have to go out of the industry for family reasons or other issues. Having to take a qualification exam to come back in can be burdensome. It can really be challenging. It could discourage people from coming back into the industry, and he's been advocating for relief there, and it just got approved. So we now have 5 years reprieve from an exam if you're out of the industry and want to come back in, as long as you're doing CE each of those 5 years. So thanks to Jim for that. That's very helpful. Among others.